We are on a mission to save and revitalize independent pharmacy. On the Catalyst podcast, we dive into current events that are shaping how pharmacists approach their patients and their businesses. Fuel your passion for pharmacy, one conversation at a time.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Welcome to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Key, president of PioneerRx, and today I'm here with Mark and Josh.
Hi, I'm Mark Bivens, Vice President of Sales for Pioneer.
Hi, I'm Josh Howland, Vice President of Clinical Strategy.
Today we're here with our first repeat guest, Rannon Ching, who runs Tarrytown Pharmacy in Austin, Texas. So what are we looking at here?
What is this? What's this background?
Rannon and I are in the jungle.
Yeah, it looks like that. Well, you're like behind some steps.
Yeah, I went to I don't know. I haven't really used this. There was like a together mode, and I was trying to see if I could see all of y'all, but
Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
It replaces whoever's talking dynamically.
That's very interesting.
So awesome. I feel like I should hold a baby lion up.
yeah, I know. I was like, oh, I'm not dressed for the jungle here.
I'm not dressed for the jungle.
Well, Randy, you're one of the few repeats, honestly.
Yeah.
I think you're the
Maybe
only.
the first repeat.
Is this a repeat?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like
This is the
honored,
first
y'all.
one?
Yeah, you weren't here for the first Rannon one. This is when he was in the middle of, back when he came on before, he was in the middle of testing 5,000 people a week at the time.
Yeah.
Like everybody. It was crazy. Yeah, but no, it's good to see all you guys. And then Jeff, welcome. It's fun to talk to Mark and Josh and to y'all, and looking forward to it. So thanks for having me back. I think Brandon mentioned, he was like, I think you're one of the only repeats, and I'm honored. So thank you.
Yeah.
Brandon's so nice, we had him on twice.
So the last one was a beta.
I know.
Right, beta. We had beta Rannon first.
Uh-huh. And so when this one comes out, we're eradicating that one from the web? Is that?
No, it was so good.
Rannon, you're the only one we've had to do over.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone else, they did one take, and then me, I got to warm up.
That's right. He was. Yeah. Madison let me know. Yeah, he was our Christmas episode. Remember, he had the
nice.
Nutcracker, and I think
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and this really badass wall behind him, full of degrees and accomplishments, and it made us all feel bad.
He was trading on his wife's credentials. That's right.
It was. Yeah. That's our. That's my wife's work from home office, and she had all of her degrees just rolled up in the little can, and she hadn't even framed them. And then it was like a magician. We kept pulling out degrees out of her stock, and so
Where did this one come from?
it was awesome.
I didn't know you were an astronaut.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
she was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that."
So what the world's going on in Austin?
Man, a lot actually. And so before we talked, we talked testing for sure, and we talked vaccines. And so that was even before the first vaccine got released. And so there's kind of a lot of updates. And actually, I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about it. But first off, I would say with testing, we've seen just a huge drop off of demand for testing, and all over you're seeing people shut down their testing areas. And even for us, we've really throttled back testing quite a bit. We still do enough at our central pharmacy to keep it going. But we used to have 5 or 6 locations across Austin, and now we're starting to consolidate them back to just our main pharmacy. So I think that's an interesting trend that we've seen. I don't know if it's pandemic fatigue, or now that we have the vaccine. Basically after New Year's, we got crushed in a good way, Christmas and New Year's, and then spring break. But beyond that, after New Year's, it kind of dropped off quite a bit.
Is that the whole holidays, people gather?
Yes.
I got a sniffle now. Let's go get tested.
Or was that preventative? Was it, I want to see grandma, and so I want to get a test before?
Good point.
Right.
That's a good
Well,
point.
we saw that when I think it was the week before Christmas, when you and I went to lunch. There's a little 24-hour urgent care place, and there was a line around the building, and I think it was preventive.
Oh, all preventive. I'm gonna see grandma, and I don't want to get grandma sick, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did that. That's true.
Yeah.
And so, have you guys seen the same kind of thing with vaccines?
We actually have too. Actually, that's actually probably the biggest development that I've kind of stumbled upon the last probably 2 weeks, is that starting in March, we did this huge cross-state vaccine push. And I'll talk to y'all a bunch about it later. But we went out there and did probably 13 to 15,000 COVID vaccines, and we gave them all to IDD patients, which are intellectual and developmentally disabled patients or special needs patients. And it was crazy. Demand was huge. We went like literally from El Paso to Dallas to San Antonio to Laredo to Lubbock to Amarillo to Mejia, Brownwood, like literally all over the state of Texas. We went to 37 different cities across Texas in a matter of 3.5 weeks. Wow. And I mean, demand was still really, really big. And then we got another contract to immunize the Special Olympics of Texas. Like through our last one, we spoke with all the leadership at SOTX. And the past 2 weeks, we've been doing, maybe like 15 clinics around the state. And I mean, demand has pretty much fallen off a cliff. Like, the numbers that they originally estimated for us were much lower than what they actually came out. And then I don't know if it was the Johnson & Johnson also being withdrawn as well, but I mean, I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think, but I talked to UT Health, the University of Texas Health, yesterday. We picked up some doses from them, and they said, I mean, their appointments are down 70%. They used to be doing 3,000-4,000 shots a day. Now they're down to 1,000. And the lady who was in charge of their vaccine program said, I'm going to stop ordering vaccines because I've got so many that I don't want them to expire. And so I'm a little afraid that we've hit, the 50% of folks that wanted the vaccine. And now we're going to have to really start educating and hitting those people that are a little bit more on the fence or don't want the mRNA technology. But what do y'all think?
Yeah, I think there's a person in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? So you have the people who wanted it and have the assertiveness to go out and find it, right? To go find the websites I got to try and to do those kind of things, And I think that's a middle. I think now we're down to there are some people out there who want it and just don't know really how to go get it. And if you came to their work and you said, hey, we've got shots, come down the hall and get it, they'd come on down the hall. And so they're not opposed to getting it. They just don't want it enough to go to your website and figure out how to do it or figure out where do I get
wait
it?
in line or where do I park? And and
where to get it.
And to a degree, there's probably a lot of people like what Rannon and the guys just did across Texas, where there's a lot of people who would get it, want to get it, and don't have a good place to go to get it. Like in Dallas or in Texas, we did this deal where you just put it in all these mass vaccine clinics, which were great for people with cars.
That's true.
If you don't have a car, it's hard to get to Texas Motor Speedway.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. And I think you talked to somebody too that saw first dose appointments drop.
Yeah. Well, so
super sharp.
I'm on an email chain with Rannon, Scott Pace, and Mark Ghost, and both Scott and Mark had significant drops in first appointments.
Did some of that coincide with the J&J? Did the J&J freeze or whatever?
Yeah, it had to have.
I mean, they didn't actually recall it. They just said stop giving it, right?
Right.
Stop giving it, right. And pretty much, exactly 2 weeks ago, because last week, Tuesday is when they told us to put the stop on it. And it was actually interesting because we, at the time, were just starting off Special Olympics. And luckily, we were about to go on a 2-week, immunization, trip across Texas. And then all of a sudden they pull out the doses that we were going to use. So within an hour and a half, we coordinated with the state health department and they switched doses to Moderna for us. Okay. But even the first couple of days, we had people showing up to our drive-through events. And we had to say, hey, sorry, guys, I don't know if you heard, Johnson & Johnson, was put on hold, but we're offering the Moderna. And they specifically said, you know what? I was waiting for Johnson & Johnson. I'm going to just wait for that. And we had people leave our clinic and say, I don't want the Moderna. We'll come back. So I hope it's kind of a combination of, I think people are afraid of the mRNA technology and we just need to educate them on that. But it just seemed like a lot of faith was shaken and a lot of people truly want Johnson & Johnson and not.
Do they want Johnson & Johnson because it's one shot?
Single dose? Is that why? You think
or do they really thinking somebody's selling them that the RNA is weird?
I think, so one of my biggest fears about the problems with the J&J was that too, now the Facebook moms groups have a lot of ammo that's not necessarily founded. And there was a lot of stuff that was going on around mRNA that it's going to affect your DNA and just worries that weren't scientific in nature at all.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of that.
Yeah. And even I had a lot of people talk about, concerns for fertility, like is it going to affect my fertility especially for the younger women that haven't had kids yet. A lot of my friends, pretty much every single one of them, they're millennials and in their, 20s and they were like, hey, if I get the shot, does that mean I can still have kids later on? And so having to really educate people about, what the shots mean. I had one of my friends say, well, I heard the mRNA will continually make, the virus, and your body's going to be fighting it for the rest of your life. And a lot of it's just having to educate people about, what they think it means versus what it actually means.
Just the amount of you call it disinformation or whatever, but just that's pumped out there. Right. And maybe even kind of created in your head.
Well, and some of it's like, for a lot of people, the last time they talked about mRNA and DNA was probably their sophomore year in high school, maybe junior year. And so they probably didn't understand it then, right, if at all. All right, so they're hearing words and letters that they don't know. And then the first thing that pops up when you go Google it is they're injecting 5G into your DNA, right?
What for some people who are listening, what can you explain a little bit what the mRNA technology is or how it works or does?
Yeah, for sure. I know Josh knows a lot about it too. And so basically what it does is mRNA is basically like the one half of like your DNA double helix.
Okay.
And so what it does is that it actually is almost like a blueprint for your body to take. And when it reads, or like, it's almost like a barcode. Once it scans that barcode, it knows the type of protein to generate. So it almost starts coding, or it's like the building blocks to creating this spike protein that then your body detects and creates a defense against. And so it's not a lot of people, and I always think back to Spider-Man, when he gets bit by the spider and it shows his DNA and then the spider gets all in that. I think that's a lot of what people are thinking about too when they hear DNA or RNA. They just think like that's at the essence of who you are, like is your DNA. And so for that to affect it or even be a component of it, I think Josh kind of hit it on the head of like, a very like not complete understanding of how the science works, but enough to be dangerous, right? And so with that being said, though, with the RNA, once your body scans it, creates the protein, it's basically like instead of taking the flu virus and we chop it up in basically like a blender and inject it in a flu shot, and then your body sees that and then defends. Your body basically takes the mRNA, scans it, creates the protein, then they see that. And then it bakes the defense, and then you kind of go from there. So,
right, yeah, that's the big thing is like mRNA. All it does is tells your body to make protein, and then it's done. Right. Like it has nothing to do with DNA, and that was where there was misinformation or disinformation campaign around what it does and how it works. And mRNA technology has been around for a long time.
It's been around for a while, right? Like since the 90s.
Yeah, this isn't something they just pulled out of their pocket in March of last year and said, let's do this.
Yeah, the technology's been, but the concept of working on it with vaccines, isn't that pretty new?
The technology and research around it's been around a long time. Originally was developed for cancer therapy. So they were looking at developing vaccines toward certain types of cancers that respond well to targeted proteins. It just so happens that in a pandemic where you have a virus that works this way, it translates exactly.
Right, because they moved off of some other research to do that this way.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about being able to make all other kind of bunch of other vaccines. They're talking about doing flu vaccine this way.
Right.
Yeah. I guess because it's shorter to... Is it because it allows you to shorten the time it takes to make it so that you can spend more time? I was hearing something around you could spend more time making sure you're getting the right strands and less time actually.
It's almost
it's almost like right there?
It's almost like custom building. Like imagine if you're going fishing and you create like a perfectly sized bait to fit exactly into like the fish's mouth that you want. And so rather than just trying to pick and choose, I think this fish is going to like it. I think it's like, what if you could like guarantee that when a fish sees something, it's going to grab that bait? It's almost like kind of reverse engineering the same thing, right? If you know that you need your body to create this exact molecule to fight a virus, a cancer cell, and actually they're doing a lot of this in the immunology space. So what if you could attack, like for rheumatoid arthritis, or have something that can actually work in your own body? So I mean, it's crazy. So that's why the technology is super exciting, and this is the first like practical application. But it's kind of that idea that you can take exactly what you need to make and make it. It's almost like a 3D printer, but for medicine,
See, I would be the one driving up saying, I don't want the J&J.
Right.
I don't want an attenuated virus. The whole concept of a virus, don't give me a virus to solve my virus, even though it's designed not to make me sick.
Right.
That seems way worse than viruses, because viruses last forever. You get the herpes virus, you get something like that that's in your body forever. never completely goes away.
Yeah, that's certainly true of the like Zostavax and things like that. And this is where applications like mRNA technology may apply much more readily in the future. But it's like, it sucks because COVID was horrible, but this going out and showing that it worked and you get like a 90% response is huge, right? Like everybody who's doing mRNA research and like cancer and immunology right now is like, we just had the first practical application not only work, but essentially hit a home run.
And very quickly.
Yeah, right. It's huge.
When do you think we'll start seeing the booster shots?
I mean, what do you think, Josh? I think probably end of the year, probably in the late fall, early winter, I would say. And the real question is going to be if they're going to change it. Like, is it going to just be another third Moderna dose, or are they going to create just a separate compound that's a booster? And that's what I'm not really sure about.
Well, they're talking about they're making a modified one that handles the variants.
Right.
So it would have mRNA in it from a variety of the variants. So if you imagine that soup having some for this variant, some for this variant, and they're talking about combining it with the flu shot. I don't remember whether that was
Moderna was talking about that.
Moderna was doing that.
Because Moderna has a flu shot. Now, not making a flu mRNA virus because they'd have to our vaccine, because that would have to go through the approvals and wouldn't get emergency. You know, that's going to take 3 to 4 years. You're not going to emergency for that. But just taking their regular flu vaccine and putting that M with the Moderna as the
I think it's a great
booster.
idea. Yeah. Because think about it, you're going to have to get if you have to get another shot or like a jab, as I like to like
another jab.
Yeah, European. The flu jab.
That's what they say in the UK. Your jab.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's the same thing with the Moderna and J&J. It's like, I mean, if you can go and immunize someone with special needs or intellectual disabilities once, and they don't have a car, they can't communicate, you have to get consent from the guardian or the parent or whatever. Do that once. If you're getting a flu shot, get a booster too.
So you're getting to be kind of on the downhill side of this mountain, right? And imagine you worked from some 70, 80-hour weeks, and private employees did too. How is your business 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 6 months from now? How is your business going to be different because this happened than it was, let's say, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I just talking to y'all and talking to other stores, like I don't know. I'm really interested to see what happens. I think I'm really curious to see what consumer habits are going to be. I'm really curious to see what sticks. Like I never thought, bars, sporting events would come back so quickly. Like even like concerts in Austin, like, there was a few concerts that were outdoors and with tables and things. And so I'm really curious to see how much of business stays delivery or mail. And I don't know, just like point of care testing, like we're always going to always do COVID testing to some extent, even like months like from now. I always thought we'd be doing COVID shots, but then again, it's one of those things too. It's like, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But otherwise, I feel like it's kind of starting to get back to normal a little bit. But what have y'all seen? Because I mean, restaurants even and everything.
But what changes for you? What changes because of the relationships you've made? What changes are you going to do more point of care testing? What's different about your business 6 months from now had this not happened?
Yeah, I think what's different is that we've just made so many good connections. And like even just talking about, we were at the Texas Capitol yesterday, like really trying to champion a PBM reform bill. And just, I mean, we had, doctors and senators that mentioned that like, I use, my local pharmacy, actually Tarrytown, for whatever COVID tests, or I got my prescriptions from them. And so I just think we've had so much of a reach within the community that, I mean, there were 60,000 people on our wait list that had no idea who Tarrytown Pharmacy was. And, whether they got their shot from us or not, they know us from COVID testing, they know us from COVID vaccines. And so I think the way our business looks is like, how do we leverage the goodwill and just kind of brand recognition, and how do we move forward with that? Even talking about, we have so many people that have gotten their vaccine or getting a test from us that aren't our patients. I don't know if they'll ever become our patients, but what can we do to leverage that? And I'm kind of
have any of them become your patients? Have you measured any of that?
Yeah, actually I have. So with our COVID vaccine wait list, and for when people sign up for the COVID vaccine, I added a basically like a new patient sign up form where people can transfer their scripts. And we've actually seen, we would get maybe like, I don't know, like 5 or 10 transfers, like, every couple weeks or something, to almost having consistently like 10 to 20 transfers a week now. Nice. So just little things like that. Like even after you sign up for a vaccine, the landing page, the thank you landing page is actually my website that says, hey, learn about us. Here's our history. Become a patient, transfer your prescriptions to us, and just trying to capture things that way. And then now thinking about it too, and I'm curious to see what Mark has to say about this, is like, I now have a database of 60,000 emails and phone numbers and names. And what do I do with that, right? I don't want to blow it by just started saying like, hey, get 10% off your vitamins.
You really
like,
don't. You only get 1 or 2 shots at that, right?
You also don't want to robo-dial them.
Yeah. I tell you something I love, and this was a scheme that dry cleaner used in my hometown. And that is hey, thank you for trusting us with your COVID shot. And if you're happy with your current pharmacy, we encourage you to continue their business. But if you're not, we'd love to see you. And that kind of, so you're not really saying, hey, 10% off, hey, come over here, but you're saying, thank you. You need a good pharmacy. If you have one, we encourage you to continue their business. And if you don't, we'd love, and here's how to do it.
Yeah, it's really about framing it in such a way to really just go, you didn't have to pick us, but thank you. And hopefully you provided them a great experience. And then with those two combinations, you might could go back to them with an email kind of emphasizing that, and they go, you know what, let's move, Yeah.
It's funny when Craig and I went down to visit Rannon at Tarrytown, we kind of got to see the whole gamut, right? They were doing like a crazy amount of tests at we saw 2 different sites, but the one thing that was consistent, right? They had a bunch of people out there that were happy. They're, hustling out to the car. It was really efficient. We saw people come in and out in 5-6 minutes. It was crazy. So I find it hard to believe that if they saw that, and then they went to another place, let's call it CVS, and they waited for 20 minutes and to watch people running around, why would you not go back to that, right? You have a huge amount of goodwill after having a really positive experience that people were initially afraid of.
Yeah.
It's a great example.
It's an opportunity.
Your first really marketing opportunity was how you handled the efficiency.
The whole experience.
I remember Frances, who works for us, saying that how her parents said how good the experience was with you guys in getting signed up, and just how efficient that was. And that's the first piece.
With some of you talked about making connections. What did you learn about? I saw a ton of articles. I shared some stuff that you guys were in around vulnerable populations and people who want to get it, who couldn't and couldn't get there to you. What did you learn about them and their situation, but the connections it took to make to serve those guys?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was probably like one of the most rewarding, like professional rewarding things I've ever done, like ever. Yeah. And I think one thing that was really refreshing to see was just how appreciative people were. And so, I'm sure a lot of people have stories about people calling or emailing and saying, well, I don't know why my neighbor got, my shot from, Pioneer Pharmacy and they're not as deserving as I am. And you just saw a lot of, I call it like immunization entitlement. And when we went, we immunized. So there's IDD group home providers. And so these are wardens of the state. They have, major seizure disorders, severe autism, Down syndrome, and a lot of times they're living in group homes that are state funded. And they were supposed to be taken care of by the federal program, by those 3 big chains, right? And it almost felt like, the speech on the battleship, hey guys, mission accomplished, we're out. And then all of these, IDD group home providers were saying, hey, we've got 20,000 patients that, I tried calling, these chains to set up appointments and they stopped returning my calls. I'm in Eagle Pass, Texas. Yeah, we had a group home provider say, the big chain took care of my Austin location, my Dallas location, my San Antonio location. I called them asking about Laredo, which is, by the border. I called about Eagle Pass, which is a small town that has less than 1,000 people. I started calling about, Victoria and Goliad, Texas. And then all of a sudden those calls stopped rolling in. Right. And so I thought it was very interesting, and I'll probably have my perspective forever changed about a lot of times when we make things, we think about, the 85 to 90% of the population that it covers, right? Even the state created this online documentation portal that we had to record all of our vaccines through. And they told us, all right, guys, so when the patient walks up, you're going to ask them these 13 questions, which were like, are you allergic to polysorbate? Are you allergic to polyethylene glycol? Have you used dermal fillers?
Right.
I'm literally the person, like, I'm literally got my hands up, like, I don't know.
Right.
Like,
and I was like, I know. And they were like, yeah, so when the patient walks up to you, you're going to do that on site. And I was like, these patients don't know their middle name.
Yeah.
Are you expecting them to say, oh yeah, that's right, I traveled to Italy last week? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And then even what I found too is it was just so crazy. I just realized how many people were overlooked. So not only the IDD population for intellectual disabilities,
right.
but then also we got a call from the state health department saying, "Hey, the Texas School for the Deaf and Blind have been having a really hard time getting vaccines." Number one, right? Think about it, if you're someone in the deaf community, you can't call your local pharmacy and ask if they have a vaccine.
Right.
And even if you show up to their store, what I found is a lot of deaf folks are ESL, so English as second language, with their first language being sign language.
Oh,
and
right.
so even if you show up, how do you fill out a questionnaire paper form when you can't even read English? All you can do is sign. And so it was funny because the state thought it was only like 80 blind and deaf folks that needed the shot. And then when I talked to the School for the Deaf, they were like, well, we have, probably 1,200 people in the deaf community and students and staff that need it. And then the School for the Blind, they had about 100. And so we gave 1,600 shots to people at the School for the Deaf. And we had like interpreters, translators, alumni from all over. Like, I mean, we had someone that graduated from the School for the Deaf in the 70s drive to this event because they didn't have anyone that knew sign language in their hometown. And it was crazy. And it just made me realize that there's so many people that we need to think more about, that either the government, healthcare, insurance companies are completely forgetting about,
Well, I mean, I was looking through the pictures that you shared with us before this, and it's like, it's nuts, right? You see you guys all over the place, and every time you had your masks off, you guys looked super happy.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was awesome. I mean, to be honest, they were hard. I mean, we for those that haven't seen the pictures, we just loaded up 4 12-passenger vans, loaded up our equipment, and had teams of 7 to 8. And one of my pharmacists, I had lead each team, and they did an awesome job. But it was waking up at 5:30 in the morning, driving to the state health department, picking up doses, driving to the site, setting up our tents. It was a lot, but I mean, it was awesome because when you saw we also took care of the foster care kind of department too, with all the foster care families. And families saying that, my son has Down syndrome and I haven't gone to a restaurant in a year. He hasn't left the house because he doesn't know to keep a mask on. Right. How do you explain to someone with Down syndrome during a pandemic, right? And so it was just super rewarding. And then, it kind of a turn. I get this nasty email from a patient yesterday saying, why haven't you sent me an appointment? Like I got my appointment somewhere else and I want to get it closer. And I was like, ugh. So kind of,
you're like, dude. Yeah,
I know. And I was like, literally, like someone just drove their special needs son, 45 minutes to go get taken care of, or, a deaf community member drove an hour to get their shot because, and they were super grateful. And so it was really hard kind of coming back to the private sector in the sense that, we're all customer focused, 100%. We know our patients have high expectations and we're going to meet them, but it was just nice to be appreciated.
Moving a little bit to the, you kind of bumped on the Texas legislation,
PBM reform?
The PBM reform. Yes. Could you hit a couple? Could you hit a couple of those? Kind of what the main bullet points are for that legislation?
Yeah, and it's huge, and I want to get y'all's opinions too, because it completely directly relates to like Pioneer and how like y'all serve all of these independents. And so it's Senate Bill 2195, and it's authored by, her name's Senator Kolkhorst. Her district's in Brenham, Texas, and she's the chairwoman of the Health and Human Services Committee, which is huge.
Wow,
so
that's good.
It's great. And so yesterday they presented it in committee, and it was crazy. Like, I haven't really sat in the gallery too many times at the Capitol, but I've never seen senators latch onto these concepts. And so bill has 3 big provisions. Number 1 is basically protection against DIR fees. Again, DIR fees are federal with Medicare Part D,
right?
But Texas is wanting, like, basically we're as, also, if y'all don't know, I'm on the board of Texas Pharmacy Association, and this is the bill that we are super supportive of. And so, number 1, we want to make sure that we protect against DIR fees in state-run commercial plans. So just Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, the teacher retirement, because what happens in federal always trickles down to the state, right? So we can't change federal Medicare Part D, but we can try to protect against these other insurances doing the same thing, right? Because then we're getting hit from all angles.
Right.
So number 1 is protection against DIR fees from Medicaid and state run insurance plans, or just any insurances in the state. Number 2, big piece is anti-steerage. So right now, a lot of insurance companies will force you to use, your specialty pharmacy, or even
something in network, like, quote unquote, in network, right?
Exactly. Or like there's some plans that now, instead of opting out, they just say you have to use CVS. Like, you can't opt out. Like, you have to. There's no other option. And then big piece is specialty. So y'all will like that. Yeah. So the specialty anti-steerage as well. So not being forced to get URAC accredited, not being forced to have all of these network exclusions. And then also allowing us to deliver in mail, because a lot of times those were built-in contracts that, because you're not a mail order pharmacy, you can't mail well, we're in a pandemic. Of course, we're going to mail prescriptions. And so those were the 3 or 4 big provisions. And our lobbyist said it today. He's never seen something in the last 10 years, or even probably in his experience as a lobbyist, that was presented in committee yesterday morning, and they voted to pass it to the Senate, or basically pass it out of committee the same day.
Oh, wow.
And it was huge. And so we have a lot of goodwill and momentum behind this. And we actually caught the PBMs kind of a little bit off guard, which was good. But now we're gonna have to fight even harder, because now that they know that this is getting some traction, they're gonna really fight against it. So that's kind of the main things about the bill. But I'm curious to see what y'all think. And I know y'all are in a lot of different things, and politics may or may not, be a priority. But what are y'all's kind of views on how does that affect what y'all do, and how do y'all kind of develop tools around these things that are developing legislatively?
Well, the first thing is, if independent pharmacies don't succeed, we don't. So yes, we have a vested interest in hope in watching that and doing our part, what we can to help that succeed. For first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like from the DIR perspective, you're right. What happens at the federal level always trickles down, and Texas went heavily on the managed Medicaid piece.
They
did. 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was coming, right? So I think it's huge to protect against that, and just looking at how DIR fees affect pharmacies from an unpredictable manner, like I think that's huge. Just being able to.
Yeah, and it ruled out not just DIR, but GER.
Right.
So it ruled out generic effective
BR,
so
DIR.
I have to know at the time of adjudication what I'm getting paid. You can't come back and you can't. Matter of fact, you can adjust it up. You can pay me more.
You can pay me more if you want.
But you can't adjust it down.
Right.
And and all these big surprises where it looks like it was okay and it's not okay, and so I didn't call on it or didn't try to get a better price drug. It claims that you have to have a price list. You have to show them what you're going to pay them. They have to be So I think that's bigger than just the DIR fees.
Right. It's the predictability.
It's the predictability of having, because your commercials aren't doing DIR fees today, but they're certainly doing GER. Everybody's moving to GER.
They're doing GER.
And that's super. And they're doing that. The PBMs are doing that because that's how they're writing their contract, right? They're writing it with a couple of percentage points off between what they're paying you and what they're getting paid.
Right.
They have zero risk. And So I think it's super exciting. I mean, my first thought, hey, if it moved through that quickly, we didn't ask for enough, right? We should ask for more.
Yeah.
You know, when you ask somebody, they go, "Oh, sure." You're like, "Oh, wow, I should ask for more."
I should ask for something.
But that's,
this is a big step though, and it was really interesting too because like you could see their wheels turning though, because we had it was really cool. So we had one of the board members, Jay Beach, who it actually is the kind of like the head of their he works for HEB actually, and he's basically all in charge of their contracting and things. And so that really kind of caught their attention too. It's not just the small businesses that are, hey, like look at us, make sure we get protected, which all of the legislatives always are, at least publicly for small business. But then they were like, hey, HEB's here, like this is a problem, right? And then also like, I think Walmart and even Walgreens signed on to this as well, saying, hey, we support this. And so, I mean, when you have not just, independents, which, we love independence, that's great. But I mean, this is something that's affecting our whole profession and our whole industry. That was really powerful.
The PBMs can't be like, oh, that's an old business model and they're just dinosaurs. This is everybody. This is a pharmacy.
Right.
Pharmacy's coming out and saying you guys are bad.
Yeah. Now, how much of that do you think kind of, because it's a little surprising to come out of Texas where we typically don't do things like that. Mm-hmm. How much of that do you think is looking at like the success in Arkansas and Ohio with, hey, this was a clear win and it didn't result in the PBM saying, cool, we're just not going to do business with Ohio and Arkansas.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like states realized they had a lot more power than they thought.
Yeah. And now, you pass it for the most part. It's good.
Right.
There's no Supreme Court battle after this for the most part, you hope.
And it gives the legislators a little bit more to sink their teeth into as well. I think it actually must be pretty stressful, like for them to it's almost like I picture them like in Indiana Jones when they're walking and trying not to step on a booby trap. Like you never know when you're going to step on the wrong thing or tweet the wrong thing. And for them to have something that was unanimous within the Supreme Court, I mean, at least they know, all right, we're not going to, if I make this decision, it's not going to come back to bite me, because if it does, then every single Supreme Court justice is going to have to answer to them too. And so I think a lot of it is just giving them encouragement to say, hey, if you do this, you're going to HEB, who was like the hero of the hurricanes and of the snowpocalypse and things, they're on board. You have all these independent small businesses that are in your small rural and big city districts that are your constituents. And so I think a lot of they want like a slam dunk. They want something that they can feel good about. But it was really interesting. A lot of the senators, and you can, I'll send you all the link. You can listen back to what they said. But I think specialty pharmacy was the biggest thing that they were concerned about. They were, a lot of the senators were engaged asking, well, who makes this list? And how do you know what a specialty pharmacy drug is? And are you telling me that if I needed a drug and went to my local store that I couldn't get it? And then, our folks testifying said, if it was on the specialty list, and these are all arbitrary, and I've even seen generic drugs on specialty pharmacy,
and
it's moved to high price drugs, there because they're trying to preserve the high price for their mail order pharmacies.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like diabetes drugs are on there. It's crazy.
I mean, it was one of those things where it was just so bonkers. Where early on, HIV therapy was probably a specialty disease state, right? It required some knowledge, make sure you didn't have any problems with adherence, any kind of mutations. Now you've got these amazing drugs. You're like 1 pill a day, and it's amazing. Yeah, you don't need to go to a specialty pharmacy for that. Like, I guarantee you, your local pharmacist can manage that without a problem.
And that's what they kept asking. They said, well, what's special about these pharmacies? Like, well, if they're sending them to these special pharmacies, they must be special, right? Like, what extra training do they have that you don't? And, Ben McNabb, he was like, I went to UT pharmacy school. Like, we're really highly trained. There's nothing different besides who owns the company, right? And then this one senator asked, he was like, well, what kind of special equipment do they have to store these? Do they have these ultra low freezers? And we were like, a lot of these are just stored in room
on the shelf.
No, man, they're on the shelf, dude. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or a regular refrigerator.
Can fit on any shelf, So it was really interesting. And I always thought that they were going to focus more on the patient choice. I think a lot of people want, don't tell me what to do, give me the freedom.
Right.
But they were really honed in on the specialty piece. And so I was really curious about that. And yeah, and especially
did you get
because
to like watch it? Did you get to like watch it wash over them? Like, I can't find a reason themselves why these are excluded.
They literally like couldn't wrap their head around it. It's like when you explain DARs to people, and then Ben he mentioned, he was like, hey, I'm losing X number of dollars a year, and I'm on track to lose 40% more than I did last year. And then, Senator Kolkhorst is a small business owner. And she said, how hard is it to run a business without, like, what if, my clients came back and literally just debited out money from my bank account at that amount? Like, how do you stay in business? And it's hard. I mean, we're talking like, for a small pharmacy, probably an entire pharmacist's salary or 3 or 4 technicians' salaries just in DIR fees. And, how are you going to run an ice cream shop if, your customers come back and just steal, 10% of your money back 4 months later because, their ice cream wasn't up to standards? Like, it's just crazy to me.
Get the ice cream out at the right rates.
I mean, I've had some substandard ice cream, so I get it.
Yeah, but you didn't get your money back.
Yeah, I did not get my money back.
What's next for this? What's next for this bill? Like, what's the next step here after this?
Yeah. And one thing I would encourage is like, I'm learning as we go too. So like my big kind of hang up on this was like, well, I just don't know enough about politics, or I don't really know who the senators are. That really doesn't matter. And so I'm kind of learning as we go. And so we're really going to need pretty much every farm. Like, I don't even care if you work at a chain or a independent. It's the profession thing at this point, right? Like, if people are complaining about being understaffed at chains and overworked and, there's not enough jobs out there, this is the bill that's going to help that. And so the next step is, now that it's out of committee, we need to make sure that enough senators sign on to support the bill, that the lieutenant governor will have it be heard on the floor. And once it's put on the floor, it can be voted on. If it's voted on and passed in the Senate, then it goes to the House. And so kind of that first step is basically calling, your senators that represent you in Dallas and in Paris and in San Antonio and saying, hey, I don't know if you know about this bill, but Senator Kolkhorst has this bill that's really good for patients and really good for independent pharmacies,
and the
small
profession
business
of pharmacy,
and the profession of pharmacy. And it was really cool. They mentioned pharmacy deserts, how like it's important that if we don't do things to help out our pharmacies, she mentioned in Brenham, independent pharmacy closed down that had been in business for 60 to 70 years, and 100%, that's like what's happening. And so, I mean, it was super cool. Like, I'm not really fired up about politics too much, but it was really cool seeing. And I was like really impressed with just like the momentum and everything. And props to TPA. Like, I mean, Debbie Garza's the CEO there, and Texas Pharmacy Association has done a lot to bring pharmacy that is typically scattered in Texas together. And so I think it's that unified voice that's going to make a difference.
We need an Arkansas or an Ohio moment where you've got just like
that's what I was going to say.
Pharmacists crowded the plate.
Texas's Arkancah moment or Ohio moment.
Who would have thought that we would have said this is our Arkansas moment?
Well, right? I know, right? they paved that's a foundational work they did, is making this able to happen. So you're going to have
and
that.
This is huge. Yeah, and think about Texas too, right? Like, I think Texas, New York, Florida are like, the most populous states out there. And so as California, Texas, and New York and Florida goes, so does everyone else, right? Like, if West Virginia can look at Texas, they can be like, well, if Texas can do it, like, why can't we do it?
Right. Well, and some of
really
it,
cool.
a lot of
it really cool.
And a lot of it comes back to what school, like textbooks schools use across the country are based heavily on how California, Texas, and Florida go. Right. So a lot of the stuff that's in those, and there's probably some possibility of saying, all right, if Texas does this thing that's good for pharmacy, you're going to see a lot of other states follow suit, just because, I mean, if you're a PBM and you manage, like, say Molina or somebody, like they manage Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and some other else, they're not going to make 5 formularies, right?
Yeah,
they're going to make 1. And if it manages Texas and covers 30 million people, that's what you're going to get. So this may have some carryover effect to some
even
smaller
without
states.
the legislation side of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, and it was interesting too. I'm curious because y'all are in technology as well. One of the senators mentioned something about like the take it and leave it contracts being very similar to tech in the iPhone, iOS updates, where it's like either update or your phone will die, basically, And so she was very also concerned with that too, making sure that you have the ability to walk away from a contract, and not be forced to sign it just because it's like, if I don't do this, I can't take care of, 80% of my patients.
Right. And when 3 PBMs cover most of the business in the state, you have to have regulations that require, these are things you can't put in there.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Because you can't say, "Hey, I'm just going to give up 20% of my business because I don't like that." You're trapped, and it's a little. It's not a duopoly, but it has monopolist characteristics,
Sure.
and characteristics that harm the patient.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if I have to go somewhere else and get different care that's not coordinated with the rest of my care and all this kind of stuff. So, no, she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that's the B&O carve-out things like, hey, you can't tell me that a certain percentage of my business can't be through the mail.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Because
you have a mail.
World, you have to have that choice. Like, what if someone is immunocompromised? You're saying that I can't mail them their medication just because it's in my contract,
Right.
Or I'm 45 miles away from just about any pharmacy and I can't make it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, just because you're saying that, hey, if you mail it, it's going to come from me, not from them, because my mail is going to be better.
Right.
That should be the choose.
My stamp is shinier. Yeah. My package is more supple and stuff.
Right, which we know that's not true.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, so you hope you see that state by state, that states come out with regulations that help with the contracts that say this can't be in there. Like forced arbitration. I think forced arbitration should be removed from, because today as a pharmacist, if you tried to sue somebody for antitrust, you have to go to arbitration. Maybe you win an arbitration, maybe you don't. They've got a bunch of clauses in there that are all, lawyers always write stuff to protect themselves, and your only thing you can do is sign. If you redline it, send it back, they're going to laugh at you.
And then kick you out because you didn't sign it and you couldn't agree, right? Because you didn't sign the first one. Here's the deadline. That's it.
Well, a lot of it was like, I can't remember which PBM did it, but they said, they were like, we're going to pick like 5 GPOs and that's what you can do, but not all of them live on the same, right? They all live in like different areas.
Yeah.
Like, it's just weird that somebody else can tell you like how you should run your business or what you can and can't do.
Yeah, I think they picked like 4 PSAOs or something like that, or I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's ESI. They separated the state into 6 different like regions, and then you could only, each PSAO was given 5 out of the 6, so every single one was left out of one. So it was pretty messed up, but
it's like, let's play Russian roulette PBM style.
It's pretty creative. Yeah. It kind of gets back to, actually, Josh, I love like what y'all talked about last time of like getting to basics. It's kind of like the same thing of like, if we can get to basics to being compensated for our services, then we can start doing our e-care plans. We can start doing all these other things, right? Like if we're not paying, 6 figures in DIR fees, we can get that clinical, time to work on these projects. And I need to brag a little bit about y'all and the bulk upload. Like, talk about saving time. Like, y'all, like, it was nuts. Like, I got back from being on the road and just dove into that. Like, out of control, like, efficient. It was so cool. So props to y'all.
For the bulk, what is the bulk upload, just in case?
Yeah, so the easy answer is it's the ability to take a CSV file or say a spreadsheet of patient information on it, the vaccine information, and even their third party, run it through, and the system will go in. If the patient exists, add the vaccine and add the third party. If the patient doesn't exist, we'll create the patient, create the vaccine, and then add that third party to the patient. And then the next step, you can go and mass complete them all and do, a couple of thousand vaccines in a matter of minutes, where 2 weeks ago, that was
staying up till 3 a.m. Yeah. We were hearing about guys. I was up till 2 a.m.
I've received way more emails from Mark at Ost at like 3 a.m. than I've ever received in my life.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I got some late night text messages as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's amazing though. Just even like last week, I think we typed, we had one of our fastest typing technicians enter 100 vaccines maybe, and it took him 4 or 5 hours, because that's adding the patient into the profile, getting their insurance, typing the prescription, like putting in the hard copy. And then it was beautiful, because then I pulled up like a list of like 80 people yesterday, and I said, hey, watch this. I like imported the CSV file and I hit patient match, and I was like, all those patients are now created. And it literally like, he was like, dude, I always knew Pioneer was amazing. He was like, he's like, No words, man. No words.
No words. No words. Get out of here with this.
It's crazy. No, but it's so true because then again,
cool.
we were having to pull in pharmacy interns to type and complete mess with labels, and now I can pull in students to give more shots. I can have my, Mike is our MedSync technician. Instead of spending 4 hours typing shots, I could do that in 10 minutes. And then now he can keep doing more MedSync. It's amazing. I mean, it's so cool. And props to y'all. And it's awesome. Yeah.
It's funny. I think I worked for Walgreens right out of pharmacy school. And at the time we still had a mid-shift pharmacist, and I had a couple, it started getting a little staff light toward the end, but I don't think they actually want to run a pharmacy that way. Right. I don't think they want to make you fill 800 scripts a day by yourself. But there's certain, there's margin pressures that even Walgreens is under that, that's how they have to run it to make sure that they can still stay in business. And all of those things kind of come back to it's a way of being told that you can run your business or you just go out of business, right? And Walgreens isn't going to do that. So if you want to add more pharmacists to your staff and you want to be able to have more technicians, that's why this bill is important.
Yeah, that's why. What's that next step? Right now, if I'm a Texas pharmacist listening to this, what's my next step? Is that email and call in a senator or a district person to
yeah, for
engage?
sure. I mean, the main thing, because it's in the Senate, is just, there's really good resources just to even look up who is my senator in Texas, and it'll tell you, and there's a phone number, and just call. And even this morning, I just was hey, I'm going to just thank Senator Kolkhorst for how awesome she did. Called this friendly guy answered the phone to Senator Kolkhorst's office, and I was kind of caught off guard because I was oh, a real person. And I was hey man, I don't know who you need to say or tell, but let her know that I'm super pumped up. I was super impressed with how eloquent she was and how passionate she was, and I just want to say thank you. And he was noted, I'll let her know. And then I had literally all my pharmacists do the same thing. I had my pharmacist intern Matt do it too, and it was super easy. And then we're about to call our local senators here just to say, hey, I don't know if you know about this bill, but it's going to really be a good thing for us and a good thing for your constituents. And so reach out to her or support it, please. And so that's the next step. And then kind of going from there, And
then show up when it's on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big deal. Yeah, we a few HEB pharmacists and myself and a few, I think maybe one other independent, we showed up, we just brought our white coats and just sat in the gallery and showed support. And, you type on a little iPad saying that I like this bill. And so, I think it was easier for me to get into the Capitol than a Trader Joe's actually. So, I just you just show your vaccine card and walk in. And so I think there's a lot of just perceived barriers, even for myself included, about getting involved in politics. And, I actually only have Twitter for funny memes and reaching out to senators and Congress people because apparently they use Twitter. So, it's just it's really interesting, and it's a fun time to get involved, especially when you have so much on the line,
Yeah, and this is an easy way to do it. You didn't have to craft the bill now at this point. If you're a pharmacist owner, it's done for you. You just need to go out there and keep shouting to support it. So
what's next?
Yeah, next just in
not
for us,
for the
pharmacy-wise?
Yeah, for next for your pharmacy. What's next for Tarrytown?
So that's the exciting part is we've got to kind of figure that out. I think for us, I do want to do a lot of the back to basics stuff. So whatever, I don't really know exactly clinically what's next for us. We just got DSME accredited so that we can do Medicare diabetes education and get reimbursed by Medicare for that. Oh, cool. So I'm really working on how to make that break even and ROI worth it, And so my pharmacist resident, Jess, did an awesome job at getting that all set up. And so I think that's really what's next. To be honest, yellow fever vaccine just became available. So I'm about to blow up the travel vaccine scene again. Nice. But yeah, so I think my big thing though is we have such a nice time where, looks like vaccines are at a lull. Testing is, buttoned up and our crew is doing great with it. And now I'm really just going to focus on the pharmacy of what can I improve, where are the pain points, how to make things more efficient, because then when that next thing does pop up, I was telling Matt this the other day, it's the biggest pushback I get from my staff is we don't have time, we're too busy, I don't want to blah, 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 blah. So I'm always thinking about how I can make more time for my staff. And so then when I present them with something, it's like, hey, you know how you're just like sitting around from 4 to 6 because we're so efficient with MedSync and all of this stuff. That's what we're doing. Oh, and I guess the other thing, my big push is MedSync too. So right now we're at like 36%, 38% of all of our total volume of scripts MedSync. Nice. I want that to be in like the 80s for sure. And so I think that's my big next step. And I've already talked to my main MedSync kind of technician, and he's here for it. And again, the more time I can make for him, the more I can free up his time, the more like he's told me, he's like, dude, you give me the time, I'll do it. And so that's really it. Back to basics, getting MedSync buttoned up, and then really trying to leverage the goodwill that we have with vaccines and testing. So I'm excited. Really fun. And like part of it's like, I don't know. It's like, COVID was such a world that you almost didn't have a choice of what you got to do because you had to do this. And then now I'm like, oh, cool. I get to choose what we got to do again. But I mean, what do y'all think? Any suggestions or what do y'all see on the horizon?
I don't think you'll find any arguments about getting your MedSync volume up from any of us.
Yeah, get MedSync up. I think exploring different types of point of care testing. Yeah. And what's available there. Interesting that there's an Israeli company that has a CBC with 2 drops of blood. Wow. What would be the value of doing a CBC in the pharmacy? Yeah. How could you get those kind of things? How does point of care testing relate to telehealth? Could you do any kind of relationship with telehealth providers where you would do the point of care testing side of it for them?
Yeah. I read a thing the other day about, the kind of concierge doctors are coming up, a lot more frequently. There's even like companies of concierge, like Diamond Doctors and things like that. And they contract with a lot of people for like other random stuff. But one of the things they haven't really looked at yet, and one of the concierge groups that I was reading about was they were talking to pharmacists about, managing their patients that are like on a lot of medications, and they're doing that on it's cash, right? It's per member per month, right? Like these are my high risk patients. So I was like, dude, that would be really cool for somebody to, if you have to be in the right area, right?
Sure. You can't you have to have enough density, right? With that patient population.
But and even the same thing with like DSME, now that COVID's come and gone in the Texas sense, the things that haven't gone are the ability to do a lot of that stuff via telemedicine.
Yes.
Right. And so DSME counseling one-on-one, there's no way for a pharmacist to do that and make money.
Right.
But if you can do that in a class that's virtual, that, or have like an LPN help, like I think there's a lot of attractive ways to do stuff like that.
Well, or you could do it in a group, like a Weight Watchers style too.
Yep. And that's how the DSME programs get kind of like done. You do a one-on-one visit for your initial visit, and it's a group up to 20 people. And so what's cool about this is I like scalable things. The one thing I've had an issue with like, just independent pharmacy is that, you have 99% of your business within like a 5-mile radius or whatever, right? And so how do you scale? And then telehealth is it, right? So if I can, and it's Medicare, it's federal, right? So I don't care if they're in Arkansas or Alaska or Florida. Yeah. I'm going to have 20 open positions for DSME and jump on and we'll chat with them. Get a pen pal from California. I don't like whatever, right? There's so many people in Texas, but what's nice about the DSME program is it's scalable. And so I need to figure that out. And especially now that they have these kind of temporary COVID telehealth allowances, hopefully those will become permanent, but until then, try to figure it out. So yeah, that's super exciting. And then the point of care test, actually we had that for a while. We did all the point of care testing and we partnered with a telehealth company out of Austin. And we did the strep and flu test and then we bounced them to the provider. They did the visit and then they sent us the script, but then they kind of went corporate and then sold out. And now they're only dealing with like big companies. So I need to go find a new company again.
So they won't work with you anymore?
They won't anymore. They said they're moving away from the individual business model and focusing on large providers. So that would be like they're going to work with big employers to do all of their telehealth. And so it was kind of funny. I got this like really kind of cold email, and I was like, oh, bummer. We've been working with them for like 4 years, and it was great. But now I know there's other telehealth companies out there that would probably work with us.
Send me an email and tell me who that was.
Yeah,
I will, Jeff. Yeah, because it was amazing. I mean, they were so helpful, so great. They even built us our own QR code that our patients got sent to this top of the list. I mean, it was really, really cool.
Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, if we can, I mean, I loved working with them, and it was really, our patients loved it too, because they build medical insurance.
Did they bill insurance?
So
yeah.
they
Okay.
did.
Yeah.
So we did the point of care test cash, and then they billed insurance for the visit, and they sent the script to us. So we got the cash point of care test. They did the visit, sent the script, and we still filled the script. And so, and plus we could swab the patient, tell them to go home, and I delivered it to them later. So it was an awesome experience versus going to the urgent care.
Yeah, that's a really cool experience for a patient.
So what's the first trade show you're going to go to?
Yeah.
Well, I was looking forward to Pioneer because I was thinking about that.
Knew that was coming. Knew that was coming.
That hurt a little.
But I guess the first trade show I'll go to is the first one that they have in person.
Yeah, first one I can.
Maybe NCPA. I don't know.
Yeah. What about y'all though? Do you think NCPA will be in person?
Yeah, I think NCPA is going to happen. I think the first one we're going to is in Florida.
I think it's Florida, right?
Yeah. And we were like, Marcia called him the other day. He's like, hey, y'all sure still have this person? They're like, we've had all ours in person. Florida's kind of open.
A little Wild West out there.
Florida's motto is hold my beer.
We haven't closed any of them. We had 75 at our one last year. So
that's funny. They're like, did you see Tampa Bay after the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
You're right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. But I'm really excited to get back to it. I mean, I missed all of y'all, and I love, Connect and getting to get inspiration from everyone, especially now. Like, I'm so curious to see like what people have been doing during the pandemic. That's why I love chatting with like y'all and Mark and Scott. And then, it's just really interesting.
Yeah. Going to be some interesting conversations.
Yeah. Gets the creative juices flowing.
Right. Well, and the wildest part is, it was just talking to Scott and Rannon and Mark, all three doing a just boatload of testing and vaccines, all three doing it totally differently, right? Mm-hmm. Various degrees of.
That's what makes our job hard.
That is true. That's what makes
our job hard.
Good for them.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting, like
that's
you
talking about that landmine thing we were talking about earlier as senators. Yeah, that's building pharmacy software.
Right.
I know, but that's what I think is so good about Pioneer too, is that some people might see it as like a con, like to be so customizable, but I think that's the best thing about it, because you have all these people that are thinking differently, but the software is moldable enough to make it work for us. And so what works for us might not work for someone else. It might be hard for the person that doesn't have the time to invest in it. But it's like we all drive a Ferrari, but we're shifting gears at different times, right? And so all the equipment's the same, but just because we're, shifting at different gears, I think y'all are a Ferrari or whatever.
I like that.
I like that. I like it too. I'm thinking the sports
Ferrari.
Yeah.
The Aston or whatever, but we're all just shifting.
I don't know, but I start thinking, we're like a double duty Ford, right? There's some fun, but we're getting
with like this big work bed.
That's right.
Got the big. I got all your tools in it.
Got all your tools in there.
You're the G-Wagon.
Yeah.
You're the G-Wagon.
When you're hauling something that needs to be hauled, you're gonna want that big.
We can have a branding
that
wrap
dually kind of thing going on. Extra wheels. Turbocharged.
It's got a 6.2 liter Cummins turbo diesel.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Dodge.
I know. I get Ford. Ford has their own engine, so you can't really throw that around.
That's true.
Well, I think we're out of time.
Yeah,
we enjoyed it. How fast that went by. I see why you got a.
That's why he's a repeat.
A repeat.
Yeah. He's on repeat.
Like encore.
He's on repeat.
So Rannon can be our first repeat and our first three-peat.
Yep. He will be.
Yeah. We just hit point of care testing very briefly, but I could talk to y'all forever. But I really appreciate y'all for sure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you and your time and your enthusiasm. Oh my goodness, if we couldn't make 10,000 of you, we would just fix it all. So but and look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Next time in Dallas, I'll come by. I think I'll be in Dallas in a few weeks, so I'll pop in and say hey.
Yep, that'll be great.
And next time I'm in Austin, I'll pop in and say hi, and I'll go harass Matt, whether he's still at Tarrytown or at his family's pharmacy. And I don't know if it'll make the cut, but that bottle of Eagle Rare is still being guarded fiercely.
He was the intern.
Yeah,
he knows how to make a good impression.
Yeah.
Well, if that led him to Tarrytown, hey, he was smart on the
good for him.
It's a good move. All right, thanks,
Rannon. Thank you for everything,
Rannon.
man. All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for watching the Catalyst Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and/or following us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more amazing pharmacy people like you. Follow PioneerRx on your preferred social media platform for the latest up-to-date pharmacy news and content.